has grown from like a small marketing idea to its own medium. So now I can just live from the newsletter. And then I have very fresh a licensing model where I'm selling the articles that I've already written to companies who then send out those as kind of an internal newsletter. So I already made, I think, like 30,000 euros just with the licensing model this year.
What if you could license your newsletter? Like a photographer licenses their photos. This year's Inbox Award for Innovation in Revenue goes to Berlin-based Anne-Kathrin Gerstlauer, creator of TextHacks with over 18,000 subscribers on Substack. Her approach is rewriting the rules. She's tripled her prices, is fully booked months in advance, and calls it the biggest milestone of her career. And here is the genius move. She licenses her newsletter content to companies. They pay thousands to republish her tips inside their own internal newsletters. From Berlin to inboxes across Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, Anne-Kathrin is proving that thinking outside the inbox pays off. There is no limit to what your inbox can become. Welcome to today's podcast. So excited to have you here. I know that we have a mutual friend, Dan Oshinsky. Dan Oshinsky awarded your newsletter, TextHacks, which now has 17,000 subscribers, which is amazing. So I'd like to know a bit more about your newsletter. When did you start? Where did you start? And where is TextHacks now in 2025?
I started TextTex in January 2022. It was just like a small marketing idea, like get some new people to know me, to book my workshops. So I'm doing workshops, corporations about writing. I wanted to, like network a little bit. And I thought if one day I'd have 1,000 subscribers, awesome. And then I hit that milestone 2 weeks after publishing. So I knew I had something there. That's where I started. And today I'm at 17,000 subscribers. And it has grown from like a small marketing idea to its own medium. So now I can just live from the newsletter. We can talk about the business model after that, but I can just live from it. But I still have the workshop business next to it. So I have the newsletter and the workshop business, and they're interconnected. So I'm getting many emails from newsletter subscribers. Can I do like a workshop in their company? So most of the content is free to, get a bigger outreach. And then I have a paid version where I currently have, I feel like about 140 paid subscribers, maybe some comps. I think I'm earning like 7,000 euros a year currently. So that's not a lot. But I'm earning a lot of money with the workshop business because I'm getting so many more emails that I tripled the prices. I can choose with whom I work just because of my newsletter.
Yeah, that's exciting. And with the business model, this is really what's so innovative about your newsletter. You already mentioned here that you have, of course, these about 140 paid subscribers, which made you this bestseller on Substack. I think 7,000 annual recurring revenue is already great. But based on this is like the foundation. And then we have, for instance, advertisement. We also have licensing, which is also super exciting. So could you share a bit more about this whole business model as inspiration for others?
I'm making money with advertisement. There I can take between 750 and 1,000 euros per ad. And then I have very fresh a licensing model where I'm selling the articles that I've already written to companies who then send out those as kind of an internal newsletter. And they are paying starting at 250 per episode. But depending on the deal, I'm mostly making deals with a large number of episodes. So I already made, I think, like 30,000 euros just with the licensing model this year. And so that's a great way to scale my newsletter because the content is already written. Sometimes I'm changing the examples through examples from that company. Sometimes I just have to clean the document and send it to them. And that's like a very new way to like make revenue from your newsletter.
Yeah, this is some kind of syndication then, but
It's
like from this individual, or you being an individual writer with a newsletter to, the corporate world, which is super exciting. And I'm super proud that you're like now a founder, because this is like your full-time job with the newsletter, the ads, licensing, and also you're offering these amazing workshops. Could you share a bit more about this? Because this is where it all started.
Yes, that's where it all started. So I'm doing workshops in corporations. It started in journalism, but now I'm doing it in all kinds of fields. For example, in banks, where I teach people who have studied law and are really bad at writing, how to write like a better text for their policy lobby papers and so on. That's where I'm making most of the money. The content from the newsletter is actually coming from those workshops, because I have all those presentations, all those hacks that I developed while developing the workshops. But also I'm writing a newsletter episode, and then I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. I should include this in my next workshop. So it's kind of a full circle moment there.
Want to know how Anne-Kathrin licensed her writing and started making thousands from it? Then join the Online Writing Club, the newsletter for over 14,000 writers, creators, and artists who want to launch, grow, and monetize their writing online. Rebels like Anne-Kathrin are already inside, sharing their best ideas. Yeah, and I think the best part about these workshops is really that you can sit on your chair in your home office in Berlin, and you don't have to go outside, travel somewhere to Bavaria or somewhere else to the north or wherever. You can just be there, and then for 2 or 3 hours via Teams or so, show your presentation, and so that people learn a bit more about your TextHacks, because the idea is to become a better writer. And if we want to become a better writer and or newsletter writer, what would be, the best hacks you could share with us?
The best hack for a newsletter writer and every writer is like, take back your ego. Most people are writing for themselves, and that's great for creative work. But if we really want to sell something, educate people, we really have to think on what should other people learn, and then put that at the top of the article. Most people start with la 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 la, and then like in the last episode, it's like what you can learn, here's a link and stuff like that. And that's not how a text is written nowadays on the internet. So that's very important. And if you want to write a newsletter, you should really think about, why would people share it? My newsletter has grown just from sharing. There is no big secret growth hack. It's just people like it, people feel educated, people share it with their friends and with their colleagues. So some days I see like 30 people from one company really signing up.
Yeah, and we were talking about like this pyramid model there, where like the most important information is here, and then you can also cut things. What are you thinking about, the lead, meaning like the introduction, the intro? How important do you think is storytelling for your newsletter, especially if you like start reading the newsletter?
I think it depends on your subject. I think storytelling is a little bit overrated. I think it's great for, LinkedIn and stuff like that, but I, for example, don't do a lot of storytelling. I educate people in a snackable content format. So I have a lot of hacks. I have a lot of listicles. Sometimes I share a little bit about myself, but not a lot. I think you can do both. I think storytelling is awesome. Everybody should learn it, how to tell a story. But I think it's not, some people do storytelling like with really boring stories. It's like, I'm sipping my tea, I'm looking out of the window, it's raining. That's not a story. So you should really think about also all those fabricated stories on LinkedIn on what actually happened to people and what that does have to do with business. I think the most important thing in writing is still, do you have something to say? And is what you say really important? Is what you say a really clever thought? And I think for me, what I teach people is to write in clear, concise language, and not to write those really long sentences, those really long texts that nobody understands. And I think that's kind of a different approach, but I'm doing it for business people. I think if you write for yourself, if you write on LinkedIn, storytelling is great. But for me, it's still like, don't write like this blah, blah, beginning with like a fake story. I think that's not proper storytelling.
What's possible when you take your writing seriously? The Online Writing Club shows you how to thrive on platforms like Substack, Medium, as a freelancer, on Fiverr, or even a published author. 14,000 creative minds have already joined, including bold thinkers like Anne-Kathrin. Be part of the movement. Yeah, and I also think this minimalist, like atomic approach you're embracing with your newsletter, that you have just like this short and sweet newsletter that doesn't, extend the whole length of the newsletter. So at some point you're getting like this alert, this notification from Substack telling you, hey, Christina, you hit, this email length and you shouldn't go any further, because otherwise they can't like open it. Then there's just the 3 dots then, and people can't really see what you sent them. I think this is super important, because short and and sweet can also be a great newsletter. It doesn't have to be this full fluff newsletter, or even if it's like a personal story, of course, with all the wonderful storytelling, it also can be short and sweet. So what I learned, because Anne-Kathrin and I, we were before talking in German, because Anne-Kathrin has a German newsletter, is really that the most important thing here is to take action, of course, and don't overthink your newsletter, rather start your newsletter. And because Anne-Kathrin, for instance, she's not writing in English as I do, she's writing in German. So we are both from Germany. I'm from the north, she's from Berlin, which you all might know, of course, from all the movies. And for instance, with Brad Pitt and so on. And the difficulty for people writing in German is that in Germany and so on, the people are not so willing to pay for content. They are used to get everything for free. This is, of course, also like an international problem, but in Germany, it's a very, very common thing. What would you share about like the status quo of newsletters in Germany and the people who are willing to pay for our newsletters that are in German?
Yeah, I think it's important to know we are a few years behind the US. So when I started my newsletter in 2022, Substack was already pretty big in the US. It was starting out, and now it's slowly coming to Germany. But maybe, like, for example, my newsletter is one of the biggest in Germany, and it has only 17,000 subscribers. So that, I mean, the audience is much smaller because it's German speaking, but I think that tells you something. It's not like there's like so many big newsletters in Germany. I see it's rising. People now know what a newsletter is. I think they're not very willing to pay. That has nothing to do with newsletters, but more to do with general paying for content is not something that people in Germany are used to. They got a lot of free content on the internet for a very long time. So you have to have like a really specific model to make them pay, write about health, wealth, stuff like that. Writing about writing is a little bit more difficult, for example. So you have to have a really good concept and different income streams. That's why I have not just the paid subscribers, but different income streams that work for me.
That's interesting, Anne-Kathrin, because, most people say, hey, Christina, writing about writing is so easy. And is this the only way to monetize your newsletter? I always say it's not easy. It's saturated, similar to health and wellness and also to finances, because it is saturated. So you have to stand out from the crowd. So I love what you're sharing there. And in addition, also, it is not just your paid subscription model newsletter. You definitely have to add more income streams to it. Otherwise, it won't work. Of course, it can work over time, but you have, since you're like a freelancer, you have your own business, you have somehow to, it has to be a sustainable business. Otherwise it wouldn't work. And you told us about like all the different income streams you have there. What's your vision for TextHacks in 2025? Where do you think you can go with your newsletter?
I think like short term, I want to like make it more professional, like with the ads, get more advertising, get the license model going, stuff like that. I feel like my long-term vision would be just to have the newsletter, to have everything around this TextHacks brand and not have like the workshop business and then the TextHacks business. It's kind of interconnected, but I'd like to have it all in one place. I don't think it's impossible, but it really depends on, is the newsletter something in Germany that you can live just from the newsletter that you can live one day from? That would be awesome.
Writing doesn't have to be a lonely path. Inside the Online Writing Club, you'll meet thousands of like-minded creatives who are writing, publishing, and earning online. Learn from trailblazers like Anne-Kathrin and find your own voice in a community full of creativity, courage, and ideas. Yeah, I could imagine that you will definitely become one of these persons who can then tell us that it's possible, to make a living of your newsletter. And we also know, especially from Europe, if I'm, for instance, from Spain, and my mother tongue is Spanish, and I'm thinking about, similar to us, we're from German, mother tongue is German, and we're writing, or I'm, for instance, writing in English, but now we're talking English and so on. What would you recommend others from Europe, for instance, who are from Spain, and then they want to write, for instance, in English or so? What would you recommend them? Would you say, hey, stick to your language similar to what you're doing? Or would you say, hey, why not try also English as a language?
Yeah, I think it depends on two factors. First, the topic. For me, it doesn't make sense to write in English because the German language is pretty specific. So most of the things wouldn't work in the English language. And at the same time, I would have to write like perfect English if I write like a writing newsletter in English. So I think for most topics, I would actually recommend English because I'm very sad that my audience base is very limited. So I feel like if I'd have the same newsletter in English, I'd probably have between 50 and 100,000. I think that would be realistic to have with the exact same newsletter just in English. So I think your potential is much bigger with English. And I feel like with modern AI tools and stuff like that, you can like let it edit a little bit. But then also, who's your main audience? If you just have like friends and family and then start in English, for example, in Berlin, English is business language in most companies. So if you are like in software product management and you write a newsletter about some of those topics and you are already, like connected with all your colleagues who also speak English, start in English. But if you feel like you start with family and friends, it might be kind of weird. But also, why not try both? Try both. I think it's not that much more work, and see like which one works, or start in your mother tongue. And then if that already works, just publish the same content in English, but always think about how would you grow? Do you have like a network that's also speaking English? Can you for example, I have like a German colleague with a German speaking newsletter who gets recommended by an English speaking newsletter from like a really big like economist. So if you have like other English speaking newsletters who could recommend you, who could give you, you'd always need a little bit of growth at the beginning, because if you start at zero, that's pretty difficult. So I think it depends, but I would love to write a newsletter in English if I had another topic.
What you could do, of course, is you could start a second one and then in English. Similar to me, that I'm now thinking about like one in German as well, because so many said, hey, you're, you're German. Why not write in German,
But like from my topic, the hacks would be completely different in English, and I'm not an expert so much. But it is something I'm always thinking about.
That's nice to hear. Super. Anne-Kathrin, was so nice meeting you. And I wish you all the best for your newsletter, TextHacks. And everyone who would want to connect with Anne-Kathrin can do this. Just go on TextHacks on Substack and check her out. So thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you so much too.
Don't want to miss the ideas that could change your writing life. Subscribe now and get inspiring interviews, strategies, and writing prompts straight from the Online Writing Club in your inbox.